Hello, everyone. Welcome to ADC Sports Dallas Primetime. Thank you for being with me tonight. My name is Mauricio Rodriguez, and I will be joining you tonight as we get ready to talk about the Cowboys. There are some news that we need to get into, some Doc Martin thoughts, and we will take a look at the Philadelphia Eagles. It is still early. The Cowboys are not playing Philadelphia until next Monday Night Football, but it's never too early to take a look at who the Cowboys are facing next. And I think you will enjoy an early look at them. Then we'll get into three questions that are still surrounding the Dallas Cowboys in 2021, and I'll finish things up with some quick thoughts on the All-22 tape, because I finally got to seeing the All-22 tape of the Cowboys-Chargers game, and there are some thoughts that I would like to share with you. But before we do all that, please hit the like button. If you're watching on Facebook, YouTube, or Twitter, let your friends know that you are watching ADC Sports Dallas Primetime by sharing the show and telling them about it. Thank you for joining me. What is up, Joe? I see you in the chat. Bruno as well. Mike Crum in the building for Eagles Week. So nice to get on live with my guy, says Mike on YouTube. Mike, nice to have you on the show. Thank you for being here. Usually you catch it later, but I appreciate you being here for Eagles Week, as you say. And hey, it's an early look at Philadelphia, so we'll have a little bit of fun. D-Town as well, and Stevie Mac, I see you guys in the chat. So let's get ready to begin the show officially. Welcome to ADC Sports Dallas Primetime. I'm Mauricio Rodriguez, streaming with you live every Sunday through Thursday night at 8 p.m. Central Time here on Dallas On-Demand Sports Talk Network. For a lot more content on the Dallas Cowboys and the Dallas Mavericks, make sure you check out adcsports.com/Dallas. Cole Patterson had a big-time article today on the emergence of Tony Pollard and how it makes your 2021 Dallas Cowboys even more dangerous on offense. It's an excellent read from Cole Patterson. We had somewhat of a similar debate last night here on the show, and we'll get a little bit into that as well tonight. But that is a great article, and I really do recommend you read it. So go to adcsports.com/Dallas for more Cowboys content. And thank you all for being here with me tonight. A lot to talk about. So Bruno over here in the chat over at Facebook saying we need a good run game against the Eagles. That'll set the tone for the rest of the game. It will certainly be interesting to watch the Cowboys and how they approach this Philadelphia Eagles defense, because they faced some different teams now, very different defenses in Tampa and the Chargers. And Kellen Moore talked about his offensive philosophy after the Cowboys-Chargers game, and he mentioned that their philosophy was to aggressively take whatever the defense gave them. So it will be very interesting to see how the Cowboys offense changes from one week to another. Before we get into the early look on the Philadelphia Eagles, some Cowboys news that we need to get into. First and foremost, it's been really quiet since the Cowboys are not getting into practice until Wednesday. Randy Gregory is expected to be back. We talked about that last night. But some interesting Cowboys news nonetheless. Starting off with kicker Lirim Hajrullahu, who is already released from practice squad. And I think it goes a long way to tell you how confident the Cowboys are in Greg the Leg after he nailed the game-winning 56-yard field goal versus LA. They have already kicked Lirim Hajrullahu, who they signed after week 1 struggles from Shoreline. Now he is out of the Cowboys. He might be back at some point if Greg is dealing with some kind of injury, or if he struggles again, the Cowboys might go back to that player who they also had in the preseason. But for now, Lirim has been released from the practice squad. And I think it tells you something about how the Cowboys feel about Greg. Now, Zach Martin was graded number 1 in the NFL this week in Pro Football Focus. He received a 95.5 grade after week 2. And man, it feels so good to have none other than Zach Martin back in the offensive line. Good to have Zach back. And last but not least, the Dallas Cowboys have the NFL lead in turnovers. They are plus 4 in turnovers. differential, in the turnover differential, excuse me. And well, my first question from me to you is actually, do you guys think Trevon Diggs will finish with over or under 4.5 interceptions? After the game versus the Chargers, Trevon Diggs has now 2 picks, and that is a very promising sign for a Cowboys defense that since 2011 has not seen any defensive back nail and rack up over 4 or more interceptions in a single season. So we are feeling confident about Trevon Diggs, but this is never a constant, and I'm looking forward to seeing if someone will go with the under, because there are, easily, if you think that the pace will continue, well, then Trevon Diggs is obviously going to get over the 4.5 picks in 2021. However, you usually see these hot streaks maybe, and then those die down a little bit, and you can expect Trevon Diggs to have maybe close to 5 picks in a season, but it's not as clear to me that he's going to have 8 or 7 in a single year. It's that those kind of numbers are difficult to get. What is up, Dom? Thank you for being in the chat. He says over easily. Bruno is going with the over. Stevie Mac as well taking the over. Dom, he'll make it week 8, LOL. City Piglet saying over, he will have 7. Mr. Island. So I see people are very confident on whether or not Trevon Diggs will get the over in picks. D-Town says, Hurts has been looking better than I thought. He's the second best quarterback in our division, and we will get into that in just a minute here in the show. Over 15 more games to go. Diggs will have 5 picks by December. And listen, it's interesting to remember always that this is an 18-week season with 17 regular season games, and it makes it even more easy for Trevon Diggs to get that number. Tasks will stop throwing his way. I don't know if teams will keep throwing at him by 5, says Dom, and that is a very good point. Hurts his bonds, says Dom. Teams will stop throwing his way. So that might end up being a lower number than we expect, just because of the fact that the quarterbacks might get scared of Trevon Diggs. And not only because of Diggs himself, but you want to attack the other cornerbacks in the Dallas Cowboys who are clearly not as good. Anyways, having said that, and having had a very quick Cowboys catch-up, because there are not a lot of news out there since the Cowboys are going to have a long week, kind of, because they're playing on Monday night, then let's get to the early look versus the Philadelphia Eagles. It is not going to be an easy game. I understand that. It's the first Cowboys home game of the season, and to me, this entire game hinges on who is Jalen Hurts. Because we truly do not know. We've talked already about the injuries surrounding Philadelphia and how they are important injuries. We talked about Brandon Graham going down. We talked about Brooks going down and potentially Landon Dickerson taking his place. Dallas Junk made that question last night in the chat. He said, who is taking the place of Brandon Brooks? He asked about Dickerson potentially doing so. And even though Philadelphia has not come out and named the rookie, their new starter over at right guard, he did fill in for him last weekend. So that might be the way that the Eagles lean towards in week 3 as well. So those two are big injuries. And even though Zach Ertz is no longer the top tight end in Philadelphia, because Dallas Goedert has probably that title to himself, even though he's not that big of a deal, Zach Ertz, anymore, he's still a player who played 34 snaps in week 2, while Dallas Goedert played only in 2 more. So Goddard finished the game versus the San Francisco 49ers with 36 offensive snaps, and Zach Ertz had 34. So clearly, even though he's a veteran, even though he will be 31 years old by the time November comes around, this is a player that was still a major contributor for the Eagles offense one way or another. To me, here's the thing, and here's the biggest challenge. And remember, this is just an early look at Philadelphia. We will not get into the keys to the game yet. However, I will say this. To me, the Dallas Cowboys will have a unique challenge trying to figure out who Jalen Hurts is. Because we kind of got an idea last year when Hurts took over the Eagles after Carson Wentz got injured and stuff like that. We kind of understood that. And we kind of saw that he was not a very accurate passer maybe, or that he had flashes of accurate passes, but we also saw what he could do with his legs and the fact that he was very aggressive maybe from time to time and that he can throw a pretty deep ball. But forget about all of that, because right now he is playing under a very different coaching staff. He has a new head coach, a new offensive coordinator, a new defensive coordinator, even though the defensive coordinator obviously does not impact him. However, here's what we know from Jalen Hurts in 2021. Because what we've seen from him in week 1 compared to what we saw from him in week 2 has been very different. In week 1, it was all about the short passes. Jalen Hurts was throwing short passes, getting the ball to the playmakers, and let them do the explosive damage. That was Philadelphia's game plan in week 1. He ended up with a 77 completion percentage, which was very high, of course, but Jalen Hurts was not out there making complicated passes. So that was week 1. Week 2 was way different. He was playing San Francisco in week 2 and Atlanta in week 1, but that was not the only difference. Even though he was playing a better defense in week 2 versus the 49ers against a better set of cornerbacks, Jalen Hurts had an intended average air yards past the line of scrimmage, of 14.6 yards. That was his average target, 14.6 yards. So Jalen Hurts went from throwing short passes in week 1 to leading the NFL with 14.6 intended pass yards per attempt in week 2. Those are some crazy numbers, and that is a very different game plan from the Eagles in week 1 compared to week 2. Now, obviously, as you might imagine, the completion percentage went way down. He only completed 52% of his passes, which was his season number for 2020. But as we head into week 3, it's kind of hard to know what version of Jalen Hurts the Dallas Cowboys need to prepare for. Are we going to see the guy that was making the easy throws? And I'm not talking about his decision making. I'm talking more about Sirianni's game plan. Because this is not only about Jalen deciding to throw downfield or making the short passes only. This is about the scheme as well. And we don't know what the Eagles are going to do versus the Cowboys, because the Cowboys might be closer to what Atlanta's defense looks like than to San Francisco, because San Francisco has a very good, very strong defense with a lot of depth. And I don't know that the Cowboys have that, even though they lead the NFL in the turnover differential portion of the game. Eagles got that 2000s college offense's Mike Crum. I say 42-17, says Charles Moore. Charles Moore is confident that the Cowboys are going to win this football game. He is like Mike Big, says Bruno. In a divisional game, he's going to try to throw the ball deep. Hopefully, we'll get picked off. Link to Mauricio's. Oh, thank you, CB Mac, for plugging my Twitter at Mau NFL. You can check that out, MAU NFL. And it's a very bilingual account, Twitter account, because I have a lot of followers from Mexico. So if at any point you see any tweets in Spanish, you can hit that translate tweet option. And if you don't get that, ask me to translate any tweet that you want, and I will do so with a lot of, I will do so, and it will be my pleasure. Anyways, back to the Eagles. Jalen Hurts is going to be a weird quarterback, in my opinion, this time around, because we don't know what the game plan will be. Other than that, what can we say about Philadelphia? It is honestly a team that needs to clean things up, because look at that 17-11 scoreboard versus San Francisco. And if you watch the game, the Eagles looked very well, in my opinion. They had some big moments, but touchdowns were taken off the scoreboard. At some point, they had one touchdown that was taken off the scoreboard, and then the field goal was blocked by San Francisco. So it is kind of a deceiving score when you take a look at what happened last Sunday. But also, they allowed a 16-play touchdown drive that went for 92 yards by San Francisco, and they allowed 2 third downs. They moved the chains for the 49ers with penalties. So this is a sloppy football team maybe that needs to clean things up. However, they are deep in the trenches. Even though Brandon Graham is out and Brooks is out, they are deep in the trenches, and they might be an uncomfortable team to face, even though they have not been as consistent. Those are some of my main thoughts in an early look for the Eagles. Other than that, we already know who Darius Slay is. He's had his ups and downs in the NFL ever since joining the Eagles, and he's struggled against some Cowboys wide receivers, and we hope Amari Cooper is ready for the game. Because if the Cowboys can face the Eagles with Amari Cooper, you have to be confident that he's winning that battle versus Darius Slay, at least in my opinion. Now, Philadelphia, even though they don't promise to be a contender in the NFC, and they might be in the mix to win the division now that Ryan Fitzpatrick is out for Washington for a few weeks. This is a team that struggled in 2020, but keep in mind, we have talked about a lot about the Cowboys' injury luck and the 49ers' injury luck. According to Football Outsiders, in 2020, the third team with the worst injury luck was the Philadelphia Eagles. So this might be even a better team than what a lot of people would expect. They might be more competitive. So keep that in mind as the Cowboys get ready to face the Eagles on Monday Night Football. Having said all of that, they are a 4-point underdog versus the Cowboys. The Cowboys are home favorites. It's the first time they're favored in the 2021 season. And my early thoughts right now is I would definitely lay the points. That is where I'm at right now. But let's keep an eye on whether or not Amari Cooper plays on Monday night. And let's keep an eye out on what the Cowboys situation is over at defensive line. Last night, we talked about the fact that we are very focused on Amari Cooper's injury. We are focused on Randy Gregory's return and stuff like that. But let's not overlook that Dorrance Armstrong and Carlos Watkins are both dealing with injuries as well. We don't know yet if they are serious or not, but as soon as we do, if those two are serious injuries, you might start getting a little bit concerned about how the defensive line will look like when the Cowboys take the field again. Look, we went toe-to-toe with the GOAT, says Charles Moore. I am not worried about any other teams in the NFL. As long as we stay healthy, we will be good. Here are the teams that scare me when it comes to the Dallas Cowboys. I see what Charles is saying in the chat. I honestly think that the Cowboys will face their toughest challenges when they face offenses that can keep up with them. I'm not very concerned about any defense that you can put in front of this football team because I fully trust the Cowboys to beat just about any defensive squad with Dak Prescott and Kellen Moore at the helm and Amari Cooper, CeeDee Lamb, and those guys catching the passes. And the offensive line playing the way they have through 2 weeks, even though in week 1 they did not have Zach Martin, and in week 2 they did not have La'el Collins. I trust this offense to perform against any defense. My main concern is facing talented offenses that can do the same to the Cowboys defense, which is one of the maybe, an average defense at best. If they're taking the ball away, they are solid. They are a solid defense. But if they're not getting those takeaways, then it's tough to expect them to get the traditional stops. And this is what we have seen through 2 weeks. You know that they held the Chargers to under 20 points, but you also know that they got a pick in the red zone, that they got a very favorable call by the refs in that Micah Parsons sack that, in my opinion, was not a sack. And it shouldn't have been intentional grounding either. In my opinion, the Chargers should have gotten a 3rd and goal from the same spot. But the Cowboys got lucky in that scenario. And you know about those 3rd and long situations that the Cowboys defense gave up and the Chargers were able to move the chains. So even though the scoreboard was very defensive, you know that the Cowboys defense is still struggling. So those are the teams that worry me when it comes to the Dallas Cowboys. The teams that worry me are the ones that have offenses capable of keeping up with the Cowboys offense. That's how I look at it. Now, BDC says that was grounding, my guy. I disagree. I disagree. I know why you could maybe call it a intentional grounding, but I think that, Austin Eckler was pretty close to where the ball came at. It definitely did not cross the line of scrimmage. But if there's one thing we know about intentional grounding is that if there's someone nearby, they are not going to call it. And if you take a look at the play, in my opinion at least, Austin Eckler was very close to it. And I'm not. I don't want this to sound like I'm hating on the Cowboys. I mean, it is fair to have some favorable calls. The Cowboys had some as well go their way, go against their way. It's not wrong at all. But I'm just trying to be as subjective as I can. In my opinion, that sack call was very questionable by the refs, and so was that. And even if they had not called the sack, I also think that they shouldn't have called the intentional grounding, which they didn't, by the way. Plus, Herbert was outside the tackle box, says Dom. He was, but if there's someone nearby, all of that is a moot point, in my opinion. Anytime Philly plays Dallas, they play with their whole hearts. Don't accidentally lose this one, says Russell. And I agree with him. It's a divisional match after all. KC, Kansas City, Tampa Bay, Green Bay, Rams, and Baltimore all worry me. Those are the teams that might be the most concerning ones. Dan also disagrees with me. His BS, that was intentional grounding. Let's open it up to the chat. I disagree, but I mean, that's what we like about this show, the fact that we can disagree and share opinions. According to you who are watching from home, ADC Sports Dallas Primetime, do you believe that if that is not called a sack, would it have been an intentional grounding call versus the Chargers? Should it have been that way? Because I think that it wasn't. I think it was not a good call when it comes to the sack, and I thought it wouldn't have been intentional grounding either way. The commentators called for grounding as well, says BDC. I know that Tony Romo was not pissed. Tony Romo disagreed with the sack call, but I did not hear their thoughts on the intentional grounding, to be honest with you. KC and Tampa Bay are the only teams I fear. I respect everybody else. And I see what Dom means here with this comment as well. After all, we have seen teams like the Rams struggled versus the Colts. The Seahawks just lost versus the Tennessee Titans in a very spectacular fashion. But yeah, this NFL league is very competitive. We talked about it last night, and we talked about the Cowboys being able to beat just about any team within the NFC, to be honest. They are capable of beating everyone, and even more so if the defense is taking the ball away 1 or 2 times per game, or even more from time to time. So, anyways, those would be, my early thoughts versus the Philadelphia Eagles. It will not be an easy game. Definitely will not be an easy game, but I would lay the points right now. I would take the Cowboys, and I would take them -4 in the betting world if I had to pick right now. But of course, as every Thursday night on ADC Sports Dallas Primetime, we will have our Betting the Cowboys segment with the official pick for the Cowboys-Eagles game. We lost the pick, by the way, in week 2, so we are 1-1 for the season. We were 1-1 for the season, and one was the over. We have played the team total over for the first 2 weeks. We got it in week 1. We did not get it in week 2. So that was unfortunate. But we will get to 2-1 when the Cowboys play the Eagles on Monday night. But we will have that segment, as always, on Thursday night. APJ says, when I first saw it, I thought it should have been intentional grounding. When I first saw it, I agree with APJ. When I first saw it, I was, asking for a flag desperately. And then I saw, wait, what? They called it a sack? And then, we got the replays and everything. And I said, well, that was a lucky break. And I thought that Austin Eckler was close to where the ball landed. But I can see why a lot of people feel like it was intentional grounding. And if they did call it that way, I wouldn't have thought it was a terrible call. Maybe I would have thought it was a little bit strict, but not terrible. So it was a close play, definitely. Anyways, let's move on to 3 questions that are still surrounding the 2021 Dallas Cowboys through week 2. And number 1 will be, in my opinion, are we fully confident on Reg the Leg again? That is one question through week 2, because he went, as everyone has been saying in the media world, from GOAT to hero from one week to another. And this came by nailing a 56-yard field goal. And even though that is one question remaining for the Cowboys in week 2, It feels like the team is fully confident on Greg the Leg, and it feels like they should be. They released Lirim Hairulahu, as we talked in the news segment of the show, but also take a look at these stats from Bob Storm. And Bob Storm, as always, doing a tremendous job for The Athletic. But these numbers really surprised me. Bob put together the numbers on kickers with at least 10 field goals made of 55 plus yards. Justin Tucker, none other than Justin Tucker, has made 12 with a 54% efficiency rate. Matt Prater has made 11 of those field goals on 55% of his attempts. And Greg Sörlein coming in with an 18 field goals made over 55 yards on 56% of his attempts. That is, and Bob makes a tremendous job with that final stat. The league average during that decade is 1.8 per kicker. And Sörlein has made 10 times that number. 18 in the past decade. And that is a 56% efficiency rate. That is a great number from Bob Storm, and I really appreciate his work for The Athletic. And I thought he nailed it right there. So, one of my biggest questions after 2 weeks was, are we fully confident on Greg Sörlein now that he made that 56-yard game-winning field goal for the Cowboys in week 2? And I feel like the answer is yes. I feel like that's where we are right now. Now, another question that I have, and before I move to that question, we have some comments. Thank you, Donald, for being here. He says, watching live, I thought it was in the grasp. Micah engages him around the 22-yard line, and the ball isn't released until the 29-yard line. Herbert wasn't escaping Micah. Here's my thing with the play. And I know it's controversial. I know it's controversial, but here's my thing. I watched the replay, and I'm not sure he's even in the grasp, as they call it. Like, Micah is making contact. But, I mean, even if it is in the grasp, 9 out of 10 times, the refs do not make that call. So that's where I'm at. And I understand why there's disagreement on this, but that is how I feel. But it's a good point. Mike engages him in the 22-yard line, and the ball isn't released until the 29-yard line, as Donnell is saying. So definitely an interesting and a close play. What is up, Chris? Thank you for joining the show. Thank you for being here on ADC Sports Dallas Primetime. And Jason says yes regarding Greg Sörlein. Now, here's my question from me to you, because I think this is the biggest question right now for the Dallas Cowboys. Do you agree or disagree that Micah Parsons should continue being a pass rusher even once DeMarcus Lawrence returns? We know that Micah is going to remain a pass rusher very likely, at least until DeMarcus Lawrence is back from injury. Because honestly, that is the Cowboys' most viable option to get any kind of pressure on the opposing quarterbacks. You have to get it through Micah Parsons. That is why the Cowboys made that decision. It was an aggressive decision, and it ended up paying off for the Cowboys coaching staff. And after watching what he was able to do versus the Chargers, you got to feel confident that they're going to keep number 11 on the edge, at least until D-Law returns. But what about once he's back? What about when you have number 90 over on as your right end, and you have Gregory over on the other side? Do you still want Micah Parsons to be rushing the passer? And that is the question. Do you agree with that decision, or do you disagree? Here's where I am at. I will give you my opinion. I disagree for now. I was very impressed as to what Micah was able to do on the edge. And I think that what he did in week 2, if he's able to keep that up, then he's just earning even more and more reputation as your defensive rookie of the year. Because, man, that's a storyline. Switching positions because DeMarcus Lawrence got injured to rush the passer and being efficient at it, that is a big storyline. Let's keep in mind, however, that he did face a backup right tackle versus the Chargers. That he did face a backup right tackle. That is important to keep in mind, because we need to watch him play against better competition before making any kind of decision. However, the reason why I disagree the most is that I think that if you're playing Micah as exclusively as a pass rusher, you are kind of wasting his talents. He's a very complete linebacker. He's the fastest on the team at that position. And he has shown you that he can be a coverage player in the little time that we have been able to watch him play for the Dallas Cowboys. So I think that if you're playing him as a pass rusher exclusively, you're wasting his talents. But I also think that I'm more confident now if the Cowboys keep up with the plan of, let him rush the passer more times than you were originally planning to do. I like that decision. I don't like the decision of making him an exclusive pass rusher, but I don't like it if the plan is to do it after D-Law returns. So do it on occasion once he gets back. That would be my take on the situation. Chris Wood says he agrees. He's going to be dominant. Fred is going to with the disagree, and he says he is going to get hurt. Donald more or less agrees with me by saying need him roaming the middle, so he disagrees with playing him as a pass rusher once D-Law returns. Sprinkle him in a defensive end here and there just to keep the offense guessing, says Stevie Mac. Honestly, and that works because the Cowboys, you can also line him up at the edge and then just drop him back into coverage. And I will get a little bit ahead of myself with the all-22 thoughts, but I found something interesting on watching the tape. The Cowboys lined up with this defensive front that I liked a lot. They had 11 and 93 on the edges standing up. So you had Micah Parsons and Terrell Basham lined up as a stand-up pass rushers. And then you had Dorrance Armstrong and Osa Odisua basically as defensive tackles, but more or less like defensive ends because they were lined up wide. They were lined up on the outside shoulders of the offensive guards. And then you had Keanu Neal and Jalen Smith over the middle, standing up, basically lined up in front of at the line of scrimmage, but standing up. And that was an interesting, front with 6 defensive players that you didn't know who were going to rush. And the guys who rushed on that particular play were Osa, Keanu Neal, and Dorrance Armstrong. So you had Basham dropping back into coverage, Micah Parsons as well, and Jalen Smith kind of stayed with the running back. So it was an interesting look from the Cowboys, and I think, when Stevie Mack says keeping them guessing, I like what the Cowboys can do with Micah Parsons if they are threatening with him in the pass rush and then dropping him back into coverage. I think it opens more options for our defense, says Allen. If there's one argument, in my opinion, if I had to play devil's advocate, as I said, I disagree. I think that once D-Law returns, I think that Micah Parsons should be back to linebacker and sprinkle him in, as Stevie Mack said, in some pass rush plays. But if I had to play devil advocate and if I had to argument in favor of leaving Micah Parsons as a pass rusher, I would say this. You're not deep at defensive end. The Cowboys are not in a great depth situation at defensive end, while they do have a more favorable situation at linebacker. Because you can play Vandrich, Keanu Neal, Jalen Smith, and those players who you might be more comfortable with in comparison to the backup defensive ends. You have to find a way to keep both of them on the field as much as possible, says Dan. And that is, in my opinion, Dan hitting the nail in its head. Alan says, I think they will line him more on the line. He can also be a decoy and drop back. I love it. Nope is the future in linebacker corp. Nope, he is the future in linebacker corp, says Marco Rosales. Joshua Davis Parsons, I'd leave as a linebacker. Jason says, yes, only on passing downs, but he's a linebacker first. He's a chess piece. Joey Bosa faced a backup tackle also. So what are you saying, says Derek? Hey, that's a good point. I respect that. Terrence Steele, by the way, what a game. This is true, Derek. Yes, it is. I mean, I'm not going to lie there. Now, Adrian Claiborne played a backup tackle in 2017. I agree with what Derek is saying. Don't get me wrong. I'm just saying there are certain different situations, and I was not hating on Micah Parsons. I was just hating. I was just saying, excuse me. I want to see him play against a starting right tackle. I don't think there's anything wrong with that, but I think Derek makes a good point nevertheless. I like Parsons lining up all over the field. Nobody on this team can set the edge like D-Law. Let Parsons blitz and chase. I agree with that as well. He's a queen on a chessboard, says Jason. Like that quote. And Mike Crum says, versus the Eagles, I want Parsons at linebacker to spy Hurts. Versus Darnold, he can edge rush, says Mike Crum. Which is a very interesting point from Mike Crum in the chat. How are the Cowboys going to handle Jalen Hurts? Mike Nolan is no longer on the Dallas Cowboys, as you already know. And if there's one single thing that Nolan did right with the Cowboys as defensive coordinator, was the CJ package, in which he had Goodwin placed as a QB spy most of the game on Jalen Hurts. Now, Mike Nolan is gone. CJ is likely to remain as a specialist, but how are the Cowboys going to handle him? Now, they played with a big nickel package in which they had Malik Hooker, DeMonte Cassie, and Jaron Kearse on the field at the same time versus the Chargers. Let's see if they do something with the safeties. I would be intrigued as that now that Malik Hooker is back from injury and has been active for the first time in the season. That could be a possibility. Or if Mike is saying in the chat, they could have Micah Parsons on Jalen Hurts as a QB spy. I don't know, though. I don't know if I would entirely like that, but it's a possibility. It's a possibility. Love that queen on a chessboard analogy, says D-Town. I did so as well. It was very cool from Jason. Shout out Jason for that quote. Well, anyways, before I leave you tonight, I just had some quick thoughts. I already got ahead of myself with one on that defensive front, but I will say on Terrence Steele, now taking advantage of the fact that Joey Bosa was mentioned in the chat. I credited a lot, Kellen Moore a lot, by the way the Cowboys handled Joey Bosa, because I thought that in a lot of plays, they were very smart with putting tight ends on Joey Bosa or keeping the ball away from Joey. It was a very good game plan from Kellen Moore in regards to that. But I also think that by crediting Kellen Moore a lot on their game plan versus Joey Bosa, I maybe detracted a little bit from Terrence Steele. I did not say anything negative about Steele, but I did not say enough. And I wanted to make that right on tonight's show. Watch the tape on Cowboys Chargers. And if there's one thing that I walked away with regarding Terrence Steele is that in 2020, he did not look like a very polished player. And that was okay because he was an undrafted free agent. My main concerns headed into week 2 with Terrence Steele at right tackle were that the plays in which he looked bad in 2020 were about play strength and maybe they were a little bit about play speed. Versus the Chargers, though, in the one-on-ones versus Joey Bosa, Terrence Steele was quick. He got his kicks in before Joey Bosa was able to get into position, and he was always ready with his feet. I love that about Terrence Steele's performance versus the Chargers. I thought he was the faster player in that matchup most of the time. Now, it was not a perfect game, even though, Joey Bosa walked away without a sack or without a QB hit. There were some plays in which Terrence Steele did get hurt, but even still, I thought it was a very strong performance, and we have to feel way more confident about Steele at right tackle for the rest of the game. Joe Philbin does pretty good with our line, says D-Town, and I agree. And Dan says they controlled him with scheme, says Michael Williams. And Dan Wiggins. And I'm not sure if we are talking about Terrence Steele or Joey Bosa here. Excuse me. I'm sorry. Oh, no, Dan said, excuse me. All right, I got it. Dan says they controlled him with scheme regarding Joey Bosa. And I agree, but let's not take anything away from Terrence Steele. That's what I took away from the All-22. What about Diggs, says Michael Williams? He had his ups and downs in this game. I really felt that way. He did look lost in some plays, but I'm giving him a pass on that because he was facing Keenan Allen and he did a lot of strong plays, including the takeaway. That interception was amazing from Trevon Diggs. But that's more or less how I felt about him. He did got beaten a lot of double moves by Keenan Allen, maybe, but that's fair because that is one of the best wide receivers in the NFL. But one of my main takeaways was that from Terrence Steele. Other than that, your usual thoughts that by now you have already seen. I loved what Malik Hooker was able to do in limited playing time. Loved what Jaron Kears, Damontae Cassie, and Hooker looks like at the same time on the field. But yeah, my main takeaway from the All-22 that I wanted to share with you was about Terrence Steele. Let's put some credit to his name. Now, there was one play in which Steele gets beat over at right tackle, and Zach Martin is dealing with his block over here inside, and he's able to put his hand on both players. He's able to not really block both at the same time, but giving Dak Prescott enough time to really just get rid of that ball once Terrence Steele got beat. That was good from Zach Martin as well, who ended up, as we said at the beginning of the show, with the highest grade in Pro Football Focus after 2 weeks. Right now, he's the highest grade player in the NFL at every position. So shout out to Zach Martin. Now, other than that, some thoughts on Dak Prescott. Thought he had a very good game, even better than what I felt he had while watching the game. I thought he made some pretty good decisions from time to time, but he did miss a wide open CeeDee Lamb maybe in the end zone. That's how I feel like in the play in which he threw the ball to Amari Cooper. And actually, Marcus Mosher tweeted that out even before I got to the tape. So that was a good thought from Marcus, in my opinion. And other than that, we saw some strong plays from Dak Prescott. I did think that the interception was on him. I had that doubt. I had doubt of whether or not maybe Amari or CeeDee Lamb had run the wrong routes. But no, I think that was on Dak, definitely. He's getting good in the pocket now and under pressure, says Joshua. That is my main takeaway. As Joshua is saying, the pressure side of things. Dak is not only killing the blitz like he has for a while now, but he's looking very well when standing up in that pocket. The Cowboys have someone special at quarterback, that is for sure. Stevie Mack says Schultz looked like a tackle out there as well. Yeah, Schultz is winning that tight end number 1 job just by his blocking. And I don't mean that he's a worse or better pass catcher than Blake Jarwin. What I mean is Schultz has been able to put together some very strong blocking play. So also shout out Dalton Schultz, one of the winners definitely from last week's game. Anyways, guys, that will be it for me tonight. I really appreciate you joining me for tonight's show. Make sure you check out adcsports.com/Dallas for more Cowboys content. And again, the one that I recommend is this one right here. Tony Pollard makes the Cowboys even more dangerous by Cole Patterson. I will have some written articles as well as the week goes on, but go check this one out. And of course, even more Dallas Cowboys content and Mavericks content once the season gets by. And if you want to read on the Titans or the Kansas City Chiefs, you can also do that because that is where ADC Sports is at. So make sure you check that out. And as always, thank you for joining me. Please like the show. Share it if you're watching on Facebook, YouTube, or Twitter. Let your friends know that you're watching ADC Sports Dallas. Have a great Tuesday night, a great Monday, a great Wednesday morning, and I will see you tomorrow at 8 p.m. Central Time. Follow me on Twitter at MauNFL, MAU NFL, and, well, enjoy your week. Thank you.